Let's break the mold. Start believing and stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. Welcome to Wild on 7, presented by Pilot Games. We're here until it's here.
And welcome back to Wild on 7th, your favorite Wild podcast, as always, presented by Pilot Games. Well, it's an exciting time of year because, well, it's the second season, the most important season, and the Wild were able to wrap up the first 82 and secure themselves a playoff spot. And this is the whole reason that the podcast is here. The first 82 are fun, and we're trying to train ourselves and each other how to be good fans, stewards of the game, and help our favorite hockey club win a championship. And this is when we really have to show up and be at our best. And Kinger, I've noticed that you look really sharp today. It's a Saturday morning. The playoffs have started. John could have been out binge drinking last night. He wasn't. He was getting prepared. Making sure.
Okay, keep going.
Making sure that he was dialed, ready to go, because this is our playoff primer. We're gonna talk a little bit about some of the things that occurred at the end of the season, and by the end of it, and there's a lot to unpack here, but by the end of it, we'll get into Dallas and the matchup there. But Kinger, how was your Friday night?
Well, I hope no one that was with me last night is listening to that intro. But no, I'm excited. This is why we're here. I know I shouldn't say this. This is very Minnesotan, but I just want to win a playoff round. That's just kind of what I'm starting with. I know we're trying to win the Stanley Cup, but I would relish ending someone's season. Having a bunch of people in
Do you
Dallas,
have a specific someone?
kicking rocks, just Dallas.
I thought you meant like Ryan Suter or
No. I just want to be the ones holding the pillow, not the ones getting snuffed out.
So you want to be Marcus, where Marcus delivers the punch, but then just holds my head on the way down to the ice.
So the egg doesn't crack.
You okay, buddy?
So can we talk about his? So we got to get into you getting whacked in the nose. So first of all, I want to hear from your perspective this between the benches. Let's start with your injury because it's significant. I mean, I can see it now. On TV, I thought it was okay. Should you have maybe gotten stitches?
Maybe, yeah.
What happened? Why didn't you?
All right, so I'll go with the play. I'm between the benches for this broadcast. It only happens when the Canadian teams are in town that I get to be between the benches, but it's fun. It's nice to be ice level and see it differently. So I see Brodin having to skate the puck up the ice, and Nino's coming to pressure him and check him. And the NHL's kind of changed a little bit. Like, that used to be a highly contested spot, like getting the red line and getting your dump, and forwards would crush the D. And if the D are willing to step up that close and gain the red, they're going to have to pay for it. It doesn't really happen anymore. So, and these two guys were teammates, Nino and Broads. They're buddies. So I thought there's no chance that these guys are going to hit one another or that Nino's going to finish a check on Brodin. And then it starts to get closer and closer. I think he's actually going to hit it. And I had the thought, like, maybe he's just going to, like, bump him, like a buddy bump, so that you can laugh about it later. And next thing I know, they actually do collide. And I went to cover myself, and I thought I did a pretty good job. And the stick misses me on the way down, but then catches me on the way back up right between the eyes.
Did you have hot mic? Did you swear or anything?
Isn't that amazing? That's what nobody's talking about.
So you did not drop an F-bomb when
That's
that
what
happened?
I said.
I mean,
like, isn't the natural reaction like
you should be in the
F-bomb,
hockey Hall
F-bomb
of Fame.
me? Like, don't you say or?
Oh, absolutely. Especially it's like between the nose and the shin. They're like, it's like a swear button.
Right.
I mean, if you get in the nose or the shin and don't swear, I think you're already dead. So good for you. Is that a more notable accomplishment than your Stanley Cup?
And nobody said anything about it. And I was impressed with myself for not swearing in that spot on a hot mic.
So one more. So I missed it live. I was driving to hockey. It was a Tuesday night, I believe, and the amount of people I had reaching out to me because we do the podcast together. What happened to your phone that night? I mean, did it vibrate off the table?
It was lit up. Yeah.
What was the best jokes? Like the best Because I did the thing, like, how did he ever hit your nose? Such a small target, high skill play. You probably got some of that. Is it straight now? Some of that. But anything that, like, surprised you, like, oh, well done.
Well, the rest of your face was okay, was always going to be okay with that stopper. So, some people said Broads did it on purpose. It was payback for the hot wings bit we did a couple weeks earlier.
A deep cut.
Yeah. No, a lot of nose jokes. That's for sure.
That is great. And so anything else that you have closure on it yourself? What else do you have to say about this?
Yeah. So, well, I almost got hit with a puck like moments later, which would have been icing on the cake.
Just Monty Python.
But like I went back, after, so the period ends, and I'm looking on the ground. Somehow, like my keys were on the ground. Everything was like spread all over the place. I was like, what happened in here? And it was just a high stick. But I had to go. Whirls had slipped a towel through the bench so I could like get the blood off my face and wait until the intermission. And afterwards, he comes on the ice. He's like, let's go see the doctor. So I've got to walk through into the doctor's office. And I'll go in. I'm joking with the doctors. Ha ha. Bet you guys thought you were done with me. They're all kind of giggling. And then I sit down, and Hamler, the plastic surgeon, was like, if you were playing a contact sport still, I'd give you a couple of stitches, but, we can do glue or something else. And by this time, like, I'd walked in on somebody who was like laying on a stretcher, and there was like an IV bag being delivered, and other guys were coming in looking for treatment. Guys,
so you're taking
watching
a
video.
spot.
Yeah. It's like some nerd in a suit, bleeding from his beak, is taking all the doctor's attention. And
so you took one for the team, and you were like, you know what? Glued. I think let's focus on those 20 guys.
I wanted out of there so fast. But yeah, so I ended up getting glued. Hamler glued it. And
he looks like he did a nice job.
Well, he said he was a nice guy.
Did he use rubber cement?
He goes, "Are you sure you want this? Because it's going to look shiny on the cameras." And I was like, "Whatever gets me out of here the fastest is what I want."
Who was laying on a stretcher, by the way?
Well, yeah, I'm not going to get into what I saw, other than that. But it was just, I think, because they needed liquids. But
that's great. Hey, another question people were asking. So you were there. Bonus wants to fight Dean. He, does one of these. Foligno just stood in the hallway staring for like 10 minutes. Like, what was there extra stuff that you were picking up between the benches?
Oh man, it was wild.
I mean, the look Foligno was giving, I almost changed the channel on the television just because it was scaring me.
Dude, it's a good thing I didn't get harder with that stick, because I already was feeling like concussion symptoms with everything that was going on that I was trying to pay attention to. So I have the headset on, the broadcast is going, people are talking to me. Dylan is actually yelling at me, watching the monitor about something that went on.
You got the towel.
I'm trying to consume what the coaches are doing, because I can't recall too many occurrences where I see the coaches telling the other coach he's got little guy syndrome or something, whatever it was. And then people are meeting at the red line and having a chat. At one point, I think it was Scheifele was looking over the bench and yelling at Dean, whatever he was saying to Dean. And then Marcus comes flying over and is like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
You're not talking to our coach.
Yeah, and not in like a teacher's pet kind of way, in like a code kind of way. Like, hey, that guy can't strap the skates on and come over here and beat your wheels off, so don't you say a word to him, because otherwise he would do that, So it wasn't like Marcus was like a teacher's pet. It was kind of just like, hey, man, you're crossing the line right now. And
I love it.
Yeah, it was wild. Went back and forth. There was some good chirps being tossed both ways, but it was good. First period was kind of slow between the benches, but the second, third, it was a little much. But
any chirps that you heard that were kind of refreshing and new?
No, there weren't any like real solid,
like a head scratch.
And those are my favorite kind of chirps, where if you get the other guy to like get mad at you again, that's like a standard chirp. If you can get one where he giggles like you get the guy to giggle when he's mad, that's when you know you got it. You got a good one.
What a weird end of the season. Just all these lineups, and some guys are traveling, some people aren't. Load management. We've had so many different seasons in one season, right? We had like the bad start. We had the Krill's gone, Matt Boldy World Tour. We had that stretch where we played really good, disciplined hockey, almost like Carolina Hurricanes West with the goaltending going crazy. And then at the end of the year, it was just kind of like a yard sale. I mean, every game, you didn't know who was going to be playing. It's one of the few times going into the playoffs, I have no idea what to expect. I mean, I really don't know because we really haven't watched. I don't think we've seen this team playing exactly the type of hockey, with the exact personnel in some time.
And I have to give Evason some credit here because I think it takes a certain amount of fortitude to do it. And I think he subscribes to the theory that if it doesn't work, don't try the same experiment again.
I agree.
So he's just doing things entirely different. And I think that
And he's calmed himself down on the bench. I mean, I know you didn't swear when you got hit by the stick, but Dean is somebody. I mean, he's not losing his mind on the refs, and I think that's been a good thing.
No, and how about by the way, going back to that, how about the reservation? Like it looked like he was, like his eyes again could have just cut Bonus in half. It's just ready to go.
I don't think I'd want to.
But
Dean. No, that wouldn't be very much fun. I don't know that Dean would know when to stop if the fight started. He's the guy when
the wires touch.
Yeah, they're pulling him off.
Yeah,
like, Dino, he's dead.
So they're chasing home ice last year in the St. Louis series. It didn't matter. So the Wild, and I think it was a long shot, but he wasn't going to send it for that. And you look at Dallas and look at Colorado. They went right down to the wire, both of them, trying to win home ice and win the Central. And Dean went a different route. And it was, let's rest our stars, let's make sure that everybody's healthy. And he has a full allotment of guys. I think everybody's on the ice except for Eck. And, that's another thing that we'll have to talk about at some point. But Eck was skating this morning on his own.
Yes.
Dudes.
Let's go.
Shout out to Kevin Gorg. I didn't really know this word, but he called him a cyborg. Like he's half robot, half like.
That's good.
No kidding.
I hope we have enough batteries for him.
Right.
Let's go 4 rounds.
Right.
Let's go 16 Ws.
So the guy's literally gonna have injured his leg blocking a 100-mile-an-hour one-timer. And he's going to heal faster than my nose, which took a little tape right across the brain.
X in there getting his leg fixed, and you're taking the stretcher.
Yeah, I'm still filling out my work comp forms, and he's ready to play.
He's hopping on one leg. It'll just be a minute. Ryan's got to get back out there for the third.
But you're right. It was weird down the stretch because it's hard to know how the club's playing. The power play.
I kind of like it. We don't know anything. It's 52-card pickup. Let's go.
It is a little different, though, because I do recall hearing in Pitt post-game there was a closed-door meeting with the players, which take that for what it's worth. I don't really think it was like a closed-door panic meeting. It was just one of those things where internal leadership was saying it's hard to flip a switch and turn it on in the playoffs, so let's not coast through these games. And then as it played out, it was guys didn't coast through. Guys that were playing played hard down the stretch. It's just that they didn't have the power play groups going. They didn't have their full lineup going. They prioritized health and energy over, finding chemistry or timing in some of these units. So I think there's confidence that stuff can be brought together and come to life in the next couple of days of practice. But Dean Evason's certainly doing things different. It feels weird going into the playoffs, like not knowing.
Yeah, and the other thing that just this whole Marco Rossi, pronouncing his name Rossi, just having that change late in the season, that was just another thing that just made, I don't know, it's just like, okay, we got it wrong for like 2 years apparently or whatever. I mean, that's kind of, that's the sort of stuff that just makes me feel unstable. I don't like when people like years into this guy, we realize we've been calling him by the wrong pronunciation. We had that a little bit with Zucker and Zucker, and I never really knew which one it was, but this is the kind of stuff that upsets me when I'm trying to like get ready for the playoffs and calm down, and now I'm like, why is everybody calling him Rossi? Yeah, it's not a stable time. It is 52-card pickup, but I think all the other times we've done this, we thought we had it figured out. So let's just go in
long for the ride.
Let's just go wild. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll get into Dallas in a minute, but let's reflect. Give me your short little cliff notes on the season and why you think the Wild are ready for the playoffs.
I think the Wild are ready for the playoffs because if I contrast to last year, it felt sort of magical, and we were pulling rabbits out of a hat. And I think this year was a grind. We went through so much adversity, injuries, having to play 5 different styles of hockey, so many different lineups. And we've been kind of grinding all season. We've been taking punches all season, and we had a really good year. 103 points? Is that what it was? Right on the number for Vegas. I thought that was funny, but it's great. And I think that, and I also you have to factor in last year too. The way the playoffs went. I know Billy. You can read through what he says. Billy was much happier with our effort against Vegas 2 years ago than St. Louis last year, and I think this group is not going to make the same mistakes, and they're hardened, and we'll see. It's a tough out. We'll get into Dallas with our special guest today, but it's not going to be easy. I know that.
I'm with you 100% that it feels different, and for me, I think the one thing that's most different is like a sense of maturity and confidence. It's they understand from last year's loss in St. Louis, and they've applied it throughout 82 games, and they've proven these little things to themselves that they can play tight 2-1 games. Obviously everybody knows Kirill is still good. Hey, we have a second scoring option. Our power play when it's clicking is one of the best. Our penalty kill is finally up to snuff, and it's been good for long periods of time. So you look at all those little facets of the game. Goaltending is good, and again, it goes back to Evison. You touched on being harder, and he's wanted to be harder on guys, and he has. He's not just going with the status quo. So it's not Marc-Andre Fleury is Marc-Andre Fleury, so he's playing. It's not Ryan Hartman scored 34 goals last year, so he's playing. He healthied Ryan Hartman for taking penalties. And Hartman got a lot better afterwards for it. Matt Dumba healthied 2 games because they didn't like the way he was playing. Matt Dumba, better player after. So the coaches have been harder in a lot of these
slang,
spots.
healthied for healthy scratch.
You like that?
Just for people like me, if you're following along at home and you're not an NHLer, healthied, healthy scratched. Sat in the press box while healthy. I have to bring people along, Carts.
So it's a little different, and it's a little harder, but it's a little more business-like. It feels like it's a little less excitement. Like, I can't believe we're here. More determined, more confident. I think Dallas is going to be a tough out, and it's probably a good time to get into that. But the path, and it's don't want to look past them. I don't think Colorado won the Central. I think Dallas is a better team. So if the Wild can get past Dallas, man, then it might be the time.
The Twins are beating the Yankees. Anything's possible. It's turning.
All right, let's get into Dallas.
Should we bring in our guest?
But before we do that, so we'll actually preface this too. We're going to try to do a podcast after each playoff game, and it's kind of like a summary, and then maybe a preview for the next game.
It's a weighted blanket, a coping mechanism. This is the whole point of the podcast, is to help us get to the summit. So this is our time of year, so you'll be seeing us.
And because of that, we're going to focus on the content and the ads, and thank you to our sponsors. They'll look a little bit different. So with that, Huss, why don't you give us a little word from the sponsors before we get into Dallas and our special guest?
This interview is sponsored by Duke Cannon. It's playoff time, and that means it's playoff beard time. And nobody has your beard sorted better than the folks at Duke Cannon. Whether you want beard balm, beard oil, beard wash, they have it all. Check out dukecannon.com. Use promo code BEARD10 for 10% off. Don't leave this stuff to people who don't know what they're doing. Trust the experts at Duke Cannon. Get that playoff beard rocking.
Well, everybody, it's back. The Aquarius Home Services and Connecticut Customer Appreciation Open House event is happening Friday, May 5th through Sunday, May 7th. Connecticut water treatment systems will be up to 30% off. Salt and water filters are 20% off. New heating and cooling systems up to 25% off. Food and fun for all. And be sure you bring in your water sample for a free water analysis. It's the Aquarius Connecticut Open House event, May 5th through the 7th in Little Canada at 694 and 35E. Details at aquariushomeservices.com.
All right, we're back, and we have a special treat. He probably is going to ride with us a little bit during these playoffs.
But it depends if he gets too annoyed with us or not.
Yeah, we'll see how this goes. He's going currently by, I think the Wild gave him this title, the editorialist, which my wife is a florist, and she says that any important job ends with IST.
Yeah,
Journalist, rocket scientist, hypnotist, all the really serious stuff. So
futurist.
Yes. So, I mean, congratulations to you on becoming an editorialist, but just a real, Scott Burnside's been around the NHL for a long time. I think bringing someone in from the outside that can help us maybe see how close we're sitting to it and work through it, but we're thrilled to have you on this playoff prediction episode of Wild on 7th.
I'm so pumped to be here. It's exciting. It's going to be a great ride. However long it is. There is nothing better, right, Ryan? You know that. There is just nothing better than the playoff series. Nothing better than already the anticipation for Monday night in Dallas. And it's been a couple of years that since I've been in the groove, and for many years I was at ESPN for 13 years, and I'd say 7 or 8 years of that time, I did maybe more. I did all 4 rounds. I can't even imagine how you would survive that, given the shenanigans. But and it was so fun, 4 rounds, and every, you're there for, watching the handshake at the end of every series, and then ultimately watching the Stanley Cup awarded, which is, there's just I never get enough of it. So I'm pumped to be here.
Ryan barely made it through the regular season. I mean, so
I didn't know it was going to be this tough.
Playing hurt.
Yeah.
It's all right, guys.
Yeah.
Playing hurt.
Yep.
Everybody's got bumps and bruises this time of year.
Yeah.
Got to battle through them. But the best part is it's an open-ended ticket. You're here till it's here. That's kind of the mantra of the podcast. So
yeah,
one-way ticket.
Yeah, one-way ticket.
I packed. I know how.
Right.
Luckily, the place, I've got some laundry facilities, but I'm ready to. I told Bill Guerin, I said, I expect to be here for 2 months.
That's all right.
Better for me.
Let's go deep. Let's go. Can you grow a playoff beard? You got some ginger stuff happening?
No, I don't think that'd be. No,
hey,
I'm not doing that.
Might make you more comfortable.
If the weather continues to be cold like this, and it's a never-ending winter, we had the 2 80-degree days here.
It was nice.
But now it's back to sub 50. So
top 3 winter of all time.
Perhaps we might have to stay home. But you also, the matchup is great to have you with us to preview, because you've spent time in Dallas. And how long were you there?
I was there for a season. So after ESPN wiped out the hockey group, I spent the 17-18 season with the Dallas Stars. Ken Hitchcock had just been rehired as the head coach there, and so I spent sort of what I'm going to be doing with the Wild. But I traveled with the team. I did all 82 games. Spent a lot of time with Hitch talking hockey on the road, and that season the Stars were a good team, and at one point in March had an 85% chance of making the playoffs, and then lost 10 games in a row, including one of the worst road trips of all time, where they lost every single game. I think it was 6 games, and collapsed out of the playoffs. But I tell you, I learned so much. I learned what a grind it is to get there, right? Just to play 82 games. I learned what a grind it was, and and how much people cared. It ate those guys alive. Every day you go in and you'd ask Tyler Seguin. I remember near the end, I was I ran out of questions. What do I ask you? He's like, I don't know. You've asked them all. We have no answers.
That was at the height of the Sagan-Ben bromance, as I recall, right? They were
totally was.
Yeah,
yes.
I enjoyed that time period as well.
Yeah, but this team is so different now because it's really, and Jamie Benn said a renaissance season.
Yeah.
But it's really about the kids there. I mean, that's what makes Dallas go, and what makes them one of the best teams in the NHL. And it's this is going to be a real challenge.
Yeah. So when you were covering them, you had guys that are still staples on this team: Ben, Sagan. Actually, Klingberg was on that team. He's here now.
Yes, we had a good hug the other day when I saw him, and he's I think the world of John, and he's a really interesting guy and very, like, I think he's going to be, when we get to my points, the prediction points, I think he's going to be a nice fit here. But he's got some swagger to him.
Yeah,
he's
he
a
does.
real. He knows he's a good player, and I think he's going to be an important piece for this Wild team.
Have you ever seen him beatbox?
I have not seen him do that.
No, he says he can beatbox,
But not with a chew-in.
not with a chew-in. He never beatboxes with a chew-in, but without he can do it.
He was a guest on the podcast recently, and one of his hidden talents is he can beatbox, but he had a chew-in, so he couldn't do it for us that day.
Oh,
Normal stuff.
okay.
Yeah. So let's. I want to start with this one. Just what Dallas is going to be like in the playoffs. It's not your traditional hockey market. There's obviously the history because it used to be. It's the North Stars franchise moved to Dallas. Minnesota wants to beat them. I played in a series against them back in the day when I was with Minnesota. But home ice for Dallas, game 1 and 2. Like, how is Dallas in terms of a hockey town? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and it is like there's a good core of fans there, but like everything in Dallas is dwarfed by the Cowboys. That's just the way it is. It's like that, and I felt kind of bad for the Stars because, they go to the Stanley Cup final, but it's the bubble playoff, so the fans don't get to share in that. And speaking of John Klingberg, might have been, well, I think he was their best player. I think it's fair to say during that whole playoff run was that 20 or whatever the bubble playoff was. So that sort of robs the Dallas fans of that. You guys were talking about it off the top. I mean, what a playoff series means, and when you win, and then the feeling grows and grows, and they missed all that, right? And that kind of sucks for them. So it's a good hockey
We've missed
town.
it too.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I actually was watching you describe it and thinking that would be really excellent.
It is. Well, there's just nothing better. So
I want that.
and Dallas, yeah. So it's a good. You're gonna have to win on the road, but it's not. It's not like going into old Chicago Stadium or the United Center when the Blackhawks are really good, but it's. You got to win on the road. I honestly, Ryan, tell me if you think I'm off base here. I sometimes think, especially for a team that, as you guys pointed out, fairly fluid down the stretch. I think it's okay to start on the road. Like, I think that's actually better. You're away from home. Do your team thing.
Agree.
I think Evason has thought about that. The pressure of game 1 at home was too much, and he'd rather have that underdog feeling because that's what this club is this year.
Yeah.
It's not the alpha. It's not I'm going to run out and outscore you. It doesn't matter what you guys do. Like, we're that great. It's different. And the underdog game 1 on the road might just be a little bit more fitting to this group than starting at home.
Totally agree. And I also think there's something about the dynamic when you take the home crowd out. Like if you get up early in game 1, or if you win game 1, and now the nerves for Dallas and all their fans in game 2, like it changes so quickly, the dynamic of it. But I think it's okay to be on the road, and even if you don't win game 1, as long as you play well and do the things you want to do, I just think there is a lot of benefit to being on the road in game 1. Would you rather have game 7 at home? Obviously, but I don't think it's a bad thing for this team to be starting on the road.
Dude, I love this because the playoffs, everything becomes amplified all of a sudden, and
It's the best.
You're going into Dallas, and you have Jamie Benn, and Jamie Benn is one of those guys, and he's the captain, he's the leader. He wants there to be like a polarizing physical moment or something right off the bat. It's going to be Jamie dropping the gloves as a statement piece, like
he's
getting
brave.
Dallas into it behind. He wants that, right? Now, I think the cat and mouse game, and this is what's so great about it, is Ryan Reeves is, I think, going to play game 1, and this is just my prediction. I don't have anything. But for that very reason, he's going to go in there and he's going to make sure that Jamie Benn can't have a statement in game 1 physically. And anything he does, there will be an answer and somebody that can counter. Now, I don't necessarily think that Ryan Reeves is going to play every single game, But he will be in game one for that reason. And there's all these little storylines that could potentially pop up. You start on the road. Dallas wants to get this. Jamie Ben's the I want all eyes on this, polarizing, chasing my cup, these different things later in his career. And we'll see how it all plays out. But no, man, starting on the road, I think is going to be good for the club.
So help me. I did my research this morning, and I'm on my phone, and most of these playoff series, they got about 10 previews all over the place. There's one written, as best I can tell, about Dallas and Minnesota, and I'm just digging into it. So this Dallas team is top 10 in everything. They got a great goalie. Jamie Benn and Pavelski have found the fountain of youth. Heiskanen, this coach, DeBoer, every first year he ever has, they go to the finals. He's like this. He's the guy that goes into the slot machine and wins the first time. I'm like, what in the hell is this? It's just a tough out. And I was just trying to figure out, I'm looking for weaknesses or, it's on paper, it's like they aced the test as far as I could tell. What am I missing? Tell me something good.
No, I think you're right on, but I think when you looked at, you knew that was going to be the case. Even if we had the same conversation, if Colorado loses last night, we'd probably have the same kind of conversation. Colorado was maybe a little bit more banged up. Dallas is real healthy. I know that Mason Marchment just came back. He'd been out for a month or so, and so they're healthy. But yes, I don't know. You just knew that, and you knew they were a good team. But I don't think they're invincible. And I think, the way this Wild team plays, they have played playoff hockey. I hate it's like the ultimate cliche. Oh, they play playoff hockey, but they do, right? That's how they win. And I think that puts them in a good position because I expect this will be long and achingly tight, and it's going to be about moments of discipline and seizing the moment and not losing your mind when things go wrong, because things are going to go wrong, right? Mm-hmm. Like it will not shock me if this is a 7-game set. And it's the team that does not go off the rails, because they're two good teams, and I think they're pretty evenly matched, frankly, even though the stats suggest that Dallas is a superior team. I don't necessarily think in a playoff series there is that much that separates them, right? You're going to have to look at me breaking new ground. Could they have to get good goaltending? Yeah. And I assume my gut tells me that it would be Gustafsson that starts, and I think he's ready for this challenge. And if he can saw off Ottinger, which is definitely within the realm of possibility, then why not? Why not the Wild?
So when I'm doing,
there we go. Thank you for that. I feel a lot better now.
Yeah, when I'm doing my SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats from Dallas and Minnesota here, the strengths of Dallas they're many statistically. Their power play is good. Their penalty kill is good. I think power play's 5th in the league. PK's 3rd in the league. What do the Wild counter with that? They've got the 15th power play and the 10th penalty kill. So the specials advantage Dallas a little bit. You go into more strengths. Their goaltending is there. They have their guy Ottinger. I think had 62 games that he played this year. He's ready. I think they want him to see as many pucks as possible and be ready for these moments. Now he's a hometown kid here from Minnesota too. So what element does that bring to it? I'm not really sure. I think the opportunities for the Wild in this situation against Dallas, though, because they are the underdog in terms of statistics kind of across the board. 5-on-5 scoring, I think Dallas is better. The only area that the Wild are truly better is that they've drawn more penalties, and some of that might be, it's hard to differentiate the minors. But will Dallas be able to get to the power play that much? It'll be a little bit different. That's going to be a spot I watch. Can they get there? I think the Wild and Kaprizov can get there. Robertson scored 100 points, but he just doesn't seem like one of those guys that he's going to force you to take a bunch of penalties. And they've got young guys that can skate and stuff like that, so we'll see. But I think it's going to be important for the Wild to win the penalty battle and make sure that they don't have a parade to the box. And they're going to have the more opportunities on the power play. And I think when that all shakes out in the end. And then the next one is experience. Nobody trumps Joe Pavelski. I think he's got 168 games played, and he wants to win bad. You think about where he came from, and it was San Jose, and he's been on good teams forever. And it's Joe Thornton, Marlowe, and you can go Boyle, Burns, down the line. None of them have won a cup. So the only way to differentiate himself, and that's the narrative for all those guys, and he has seen it. He has seen Joe Thornton chase cups, gray beard, on one leg in Florida, in Toronto. This might be his chance. So he's going to be motivated. Is he going to have it? And it's going to be the same for Ben. Close in 20, fell short. These guys they're long in the tooth. And you touched on something, the fountain of youth.
Great seasons for both of them.
Yeah.
I mean, really, they have a handful of guys that are basically point a game.
Yeah.
There's about 5 forwards. Heskinen's up there too, but they really restarted their careers with DeBoer. I mean, letting go of some of the stingy defensive approach and letting them off the leash.
And they're trailers now, man, and they've hooked themselves up to young, fast, powerful cars, and that's what it is. And that they have done very similar things to what Zuccarello has done by being and playing alongside Kaprizov and JoJo alongside Boldy. It's very similar. They're using the strengths of the young kids to make their games better and still relevant. But at the same time, I look at that's where the Wild have somewhat of a competitive advantage in my eyes, is that they have experience through the depth of their lineup in these spots where Dallas maybe doesn't, and that's in net, key position. Now, Gustafson's unknown. Yeah, that's absolutely. But you know, and I could probably go on a bunch of tangents, and I'll get to this one later, but the goaltending situation here this year reminds me so much of St. Louis last year, where you had the young guy come in who had a great season in Husso, and then the 1 game 2 plays great.
Binnington was the gamer.
And then Binnington came in, the veteran guy that's won cups, that closes it out and gets it done. So there are parallels to that too. But the Wild strength definitely for me is in their mentality, their experience, and other things. I think it's going to be a dogfight, and they're going to have to stay committed to who they are. They got away from that last year, and I'm pretty confident they won't make that mistake again this year.
So Scott, one of the things I love about playoff hockey is I love the hate. I love just hating other teams just all of a sudden you'll hate the Vancouver Canucks 10 years ago because you're going up against them a bunch. Who are the guys on this Dallas team? I'm assuming it's this Marchment. I was just looking at the roster. Who are the guys that David Perron last year? This guy, just a dark shield. I mean, get him out of here, But there are these. Sometimes it surprises you who it is. Who are we going to hate on Dallas by the end of this playoff series?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, Jamie Benn probably is going to, and Ryan's point's a good one because Jamie will want to, even though he's really had a renaissance, in terms of his production. He will be in the thick of things. I'm really fascinated on the whole Ryan Suter thing, right? The whole, and his role there is very. I don't want to say
diminished.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, it's a diminished role. That it is what it is, right? He's nearing the end of a very, very solid NHL career. I had this conversation with somebody the other night when we were in Nashville. I happened to be in Nashville when Ryan played his first game back there after he'd come here, and. I've known Ryan a long time. And they booed him like crazy. I think they still do in Nashville because he left as a free agent. He was genuinely surprised. He was I talked to him after the game. He's like, I didn't expect that. And I was like, dude, what else could you have possibly expected to happen here? But he was he took him by surprise. And I'm wondering what it's going to be like for him to, there'll be lots of emotions. The emotions of being bought out and what happened at the end here for him, I'm sure, still weighs on him. And I'm curious about how that's going to work out. What's it going to be like with the fan reaction? All those kinds of things. Again, his role is certainly different than when he first came here. But to me, that's going to be
you could see that emotion boiling over. Some of the guys that were in the room together. It seems like Foligno and him have traded some paint the few times they've played each other since he left. And I wonder about that too. Is he top pairing with? That was just maybe the lineup down the stretch.
He was, yeah. And I think the message that's been sent to him is that he's now going to be a third pair guy. And what I'll be curious to see is if he changes the way that he plays. I think that for a long time he understood that he's going to be playing 30 minutes a night and that he needs to preserve his health and not get into the extracurriculars and not, do some of these things that can help in playoff series change the tune. That might be his role now. And then he's
strong too. I mean,
is he willing to embrace it?
He dropped Kirill and
really
Revo.
Put a cross check in somebody's teeth if he has to. I think this year more than ever before the answer might be yes. So I'm just curious to see how that plays out. But I also think in terms of the hate, Max Domi is interesting to me.
Yep.
He seems to agitate a little bit, but I think fans are going to by the end they're going to hate Hakanpää and Lindell.
Okay.
It's going to be a situation where they're going to see a lot of Kirill, I think, and Kirill might have a hard time finding space. And this D set is, I think, legitimately good defensively, and it might be one of those smothering situations where they're just annoyed because every time your stud looks up, he's got one of these two faces in his face.
Yeah, Esa Lindell is he's just rock solid. Doesn't say much, sort of the quiet Finn, but really solid. Hakanpää's interesting too because he's enormous,
right?
And
I was reading a story. This was months ago that those two fell the coach didn't mean to put them together. He had to by force, and then all of a sudden they were just dominant to where he couldn't separate them. And now that's their trusted pair defensively, where you've got Hakanpää, the big, heavy, sturdy dude, and Esa Lindell, who can do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, it's an interesting group back there, and you're right, they're a good, solid group. But they went through a period where they didn't score. It was before the trade deadline. It was kind of weird because the offense seemed just dried up for them. And then, you mentioned Max Domi and Dadonov.
Yeah.
Sort of tinkering, sort of filling in around the edges there. And Wyatt Johnson, we were talking before, I didn't even realize he tied for the league lead among rookie goal scorers with 24 goals. Like, how did that happen? First round pick, though, another good player. So, but I don't, the hate thing will be interesting. And sometimes it'll be organic, and you're right, it'll be somebody you might not even think of, but something will happen.
That's when it becomes real. Once you get done with the butt-sniffing phase where everyone's trying to not make a mistake, and there's just a moment where it becomes a series, where it's we're out there now.
Something tells me with this group, though, if it's not Jamie Benn, there might not be a moment. And that might be a good thing for the Wild. It's possible when I look at their 12 forwards.
Not a lot of Pims on that squad. I was looking.
And there's not a lot of grind. They have lines that I think want to play north and get up the ice and beat you with their feet. And the game has gone that direction. But the game always goes back a handful of years in the playoffs where it gets big, heavy, hard.
Stone Ages.
Which
is the best.
It's that balancing act from management and coaches into how much value do you place on size and physicality, how much do you place on skill and speed. And I think the two clubs have slightly different views on that right now, and that also may be a tipping factor in the end.
Bill Guerin was going to do the league call today earlier, and we were joking about how Gary Bettman always insists that the standard gets called and that it's no different in the playoffs than the regular season, which of course is patently false, right? Because it is called differently, and the game is different in the playoffs. And I think that, and again, we talked about how good Dallas's power play is and how disciplined you're going to have to be, but I think it plays to the Wild's strength that the game does get called. There's a little bit more latitude. And because the games, I think, are going to be tighter, and I think the grind part of it is going to be critical. And I think that is a good thing for the Wild, because I think you're right. I don't think Dallas wants to play that game. It's not really how they're built. So if you can impose your will on Dallas and grind and be comfortable up a goal, down a goal, it's okay, and keep grinding, I think that's how you win that series.
Speaking of grind, the Minnesota playoff mantra is grit first. And John, you have a pretty sweet idea that I'll have you explain to us. But before we get to it,
a word from our sponsors.
Boom!
The Wild on 7th pod is sponsored by Gem Sleep. Even Ryan Carter's mother is solving her sleep apnea. We got these late starts for the playoff games. We can't have Dana Carter walking around like a walking zombie, low energy, hurting her relationships, bad for her health. No, she took the initiative. Gem Sleep took care of her, almost like an Uber for sleep apnea. Gem Sleep is where sleep apnea goes to get put to bed. And be like Ryan Carter's mother and reach out to mygemsleep.com/wild. Don't be a walking zombie. Take care of yourself this playoff season, just like Mrs. Carter.
All right, everybody. Well, I think with the 80-degree days that just rolled through, we can officially say spring is here, which means it's roofing season. And if you're like me, lived in one of the areas that had the storms roll through with plenty of damage, it can take 18, 24 months for some of that damage to rear its ugly head. Good thing for you, our friends at Wild Construction have a great tool on their website. They've got a 3-year hail history map. They've got inspection write-ups and other things that you can check out. Super easy to use. Just go to their website, input your address, and they'll give you info on good, better, best price options for your roof and the damage that you might have. These guys want to help you out. They're a Minnesota-based company, good quality guys. And, hey, man, Wild Construction, they make it happen. Check them out, wildconstructionmn.com.
Well, the Wild are in the second season, the best one. And you know what? It's also slaw season. Do not sleep on the slaw. Get yourself some Jimmy's coleslaw. They have original, pineapple, and fat-free. So you got that paper plate rocking out by the grill. You got that warm burger, a little bit of crunch, and then you add some cool coleslaw texture. It's the best of all worlds happening at your BBQ. Check it out. They're a Minnesota company down from Stewartville, Minnesota, family-owned. Check out Jimmy's salad dressings and dips. Don't sleep on the slaw. Don't you be messing with my dressing. And we're back. You ready?
Tell us about that game, John.
So I'm really excited about the playoffs. I went to the hardware store. I bought some sandpaper. If you're listening, you can maybe listen. Maybe you can hear this. Nice. That's the little details.
80 grit. I wanted the playoff slogan to be like 20 grit, 20 guys, grit.
Yeah, that was. Thanks for telling us that like a month ago. But no, I mean grit first, meaning kind of what Scott was just talking about. Take care of the hard stuff, and we'll play later. That's kind of been Dean's thing. You know, we will not be successful unless we commit to the grind. And I think it seems like on paper that could be beneficial to us against Dallas. But what we did, a lot of these playoff predictions, it's like you say something, no one remembers what you said, and blah, blah, blah. So we bought some sandpaper. We each have a piece of sandpaper, and we wrote our round one predictions on the sandpaper, which is terrible for Sharpies, by the way. Yeah. I think these Sharpies are ruined. But this is just first round, and the way we did it is you need to see the Wild to victory. So if you're looking out and seeing the Wild beating the Stars, what are your 5 hot takes about how they did that?
The 5 storylines.
5 storylines, but you have to commit to something. You can't just be like, great goaltending, right? You got to put something out there that someone can call you on.
The hot take on great goaltending.
Hot take on goaltending or what have you. So let's go around. We just have 5 of them. I think we'll learn a lot about – I think this will be an effective playoff preview. But my first is I wrote Moose Crossing. I think Marcus Foligno has had this really odd season. I think he's probably been disappointed by the way it went, and something has started to happen with this guy down the stretch where from taking, I have your head, grabbing the helmet to the stare down the other night. I think he's just going to be a huge part of this first-round playoff series. I think he's going to hit more bodies. Take the over on Prize Picks on hits. This guy is going to be a human cannonball, and I think he's going to try to I think he's just going to spill the beans, leave it all on the ice, and I think 17 is going to be an absolutely critical part of this first-round playoff series. And this season was kind of uneven for him, but I think he shows up in a big way, this type of hockey.
I tend to agree. The one thing I'll be watching closely is when he's had his most success, there's been some consistency in his line mates in a certain style of play. And I think there's question marks on what that might look like, what the lineup might look like, his line mates might look like, and then how that fits. I don't think his game is going to change whatsoever. I do think that the line might change the way that all that plays out at some point. So if he's with Nyquist
and I'm not even talking scoring.
Yeah.
I think he's just going to be you think of that Islanders identity line, I just think Foligno's going to be – there's no way you can watch this round of the playoffs and not see the impact he made. Those guys are going to be in ice bags, the next morning.
Well, Scott, give us your first one.
Do you think it's what do you think it says that you guys both wrote?
We're latitude, you're longitude?
Yeah. You turned your
Where are you from?
That's why we like you. We want a different outlook.
I wrote mine on
the long way.
I'm left-handed too. So anyway, so my first one, based on the fact that I was here early this morning and I did see Joel Eriksson skate for the better part of half an hour, maybe a little bit more, and for a guy who blocked the shot, to me that speaks volumes about his potential. And I know Dean Evison was very, I don't want to say cagey, but he doesn't know if Eriksson will be available for game one, but he didn't say he wouldn't. And I think he will play, and I think he's going to be, it goes without saying, a critical part of this lineup because he does everything. And you mentioned in the broadcast the night he got hurt, he's likely the team's MVP, and I couldn't agree more. And I think he's going to be really important in neutralizing Robertson's line, because I expect he'll probably play opposite that top line, and I think that goes to negating their biggest offensive threat.
Nice.
I've got a similar one. It's I'll just start with it, but I have X scoring the series winning goal, and it's similar. What I think is exciting about that prospect is what Eriksson can do is shut things down defensively, but at the same time it gives that group and nothing. I'm not throwing shade on Gaudreau or anything like that, but Eriksson is just a little bit different and he's more suited for playoff hockey. But if you can force that line into having to make plays and turn the puck over, between Boldy and Johansson, with their rush prowess the other direction, all of a sudden it starts to look really good for the Wild, where you have guys like Pavelski, Robertson, that maybe aren't going to be able to catch anybody going the other direction. But if they're forcing plays, turning the puck over, it could be a good thing. But in the end, I have Eriksson scoring the series-clinching goal. That could be 6, could be 7, not necessarily an OT.
Specific, I like it. Do you see they're calling Robertson Pete Davidson?
I did hear that, yeah.
Because he nothing about him looks dynamic, but he's
got 100 and some points.
Keeps scoring like SNL's Pete Davidson.
If you dig into the analytics too, I was trying to figure out what the identity is. So you can look at like NHL's top 15 chances generated off of rush, off of cycle, off of different facets of the game, slot passes, all these. The only one he's really in is like primary assists and like goal scoring. So he doesn't have like an identity. He's not like a cycle guy. Like Kirill Kaprizov is like top 10 cycle, and it'll be cycle chances, cycle plays, cycle. Robertson, he's not top 10 in those. He doesn't have an identity, and he's not super talented off the rush. He's not, dominant on the cycle. But at the end of the day, somehow he has 100 and some points. It's pretty amazing. It's like, how does he do it then? It's
Pete Davidson.
Yeah.
He just keeps bringing people home. So this is probably my most controversial one, and I'd be curious to know what you guys think. So Ryan mentioned there seems to be this thing with the team. Even Billy was talking about last year's team versus this year's team. It's like we're in this 2-year set mentally. No matter if you, and we've been doing the pod a couple years. So last year in the first game, Wild they played pretty wild out of the gates. Took a couple penalties. It kind of got us out of the blocks weird. I really believe that we will benefit from an absolute chaos atmosphere in the playoffs. And there's a show I watch called Fauda, and Fauda just means like just something's happened. It's madness. And we've seen it a half a dozen times this year. We've had these games where there's like the full penalty box, or coaches are trying to fight each other. Moose has got laser beams coming out of his eyes. And whenever that happens, I think our team's pretty comfortable with that. Hartman, we got all these guys, Middleton, some guys that are going to come out in the playoffs. And we wanted the 7th Street Savages last year, and we really got into the playoffs, and it was like every night we were guessing what kind of game we should play. I just think when I look at this series, I think 3 of these games are going to be like that St. Louis game. I think it's going to be 1970s gong show, must-see TV. I think we're going to benefit from that. I think it's going to get loose out there. I don't know. What do you think? Good or bad on that?
I just disagree.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You think we're going to stay tight?
I do. I don't think it's going to get wild. I think that they tried to get cute and they tried to do things last year, and I think that, and it touches on the point I made earlier about maturity. I just think that they're so much more focused on a process and a style that it'll be harder for them to get off of that. The challenge, I think, actually will be to do the opposite, to not get wrapped up in trying to be the bigger guy who can drum their chest harder, who can scare the other person more. I actually think that will be important.
I'm going 50-plus PIMs. That would be the number, right? I think
who?
For the Wild, 50-plus PIMs. I think we're going to see some weird stuff.
Maybe. I love that show, though, Fauda.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah,
amazing.
Really good.
What do you have for your next?
Number 2, I have Gustafsson outduels Ottinger, pitches 2 shutouts. 2 shutouts in the series.
2. So
That's big.
Yeah, and Dean was a little coy today. He wouldn't touch on whether he's going to rotate the goaltenders or not, and he said all along he will, but I do think he believes that both goaltenders will play. I take a different stance, and I think it's funny how history repeats itself. I'm going back to the St. Louis series last year, and I think Marc-Andre Fleury is the one that wins the final game in the Wild net to close this series out.
So I'm curious about this because I provided some content for the Carolina Hurricanes the last couple of years, and so followed them pretty closely. And I'm curious. I have no idea what Rob Brindamore is doing, but Freddie Anderson, who hasn't played in the playoff game for 3 years, is he should be the guy, but he's probably not as good as Antti is right now. And I hear he's talking the same kind of like rotational talk. As a player, do you care, or because I think the playoff dynamic is one guy, he's your guy, you ride him. Mm-hmm. And I would. Well, I'm going to ask you a double-ended question, which is not very smart. But do you think who starts in Game 1 then? Who do you think starts?
Gustafsson.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that you go back to Washington winning the Cup in 2018, and Grubauer played the first 2 games because he was a better goalie and deserved to start. And Braden Holtby comes off the bench and runs the table. Mm-hmm. Right? They're this close to they won Game 3 in overtime. I remember it distinctly. They're this close to being gone in the first round. And Braden Holtby comes in and runs the table. And I think it's easier to go from a younger guy to a veteran guy, right? So Gustafsson starts. If you're making a move to Fleury, then I think it makes more sense to go that way.
I also think if you the goaltending situation for the Wild, this is the second year in a row now where they have not had the guy. They've had 2 guys. Right. And they tried to turn it into the guy last year with Marc-Andre Fleury. And that, I wouldn't say it caused problems, but what it does is it puts all the pressure on the coach to make the right decision. And he has to have his hand on the crystal ball and be able to read and see that Marc-Andre Fleury is feeling better today. You know, it seems so simple from 30,000 feet. That guy played good. He's in the next game. When the real answer might be, man, this guy, he sometimes isn't great on the follow-up of a good game, so let's put the other dude in. It's just hard with two goalies. It's easier when you have one and you just know the guy.
And there's so much noise with the 2 years. Because really it's like roulette. It's a totally new thing, right?
Yeah.
But we have Talbot last year and Flower, and now Gus and Flower. It's like everything's got these layers from last year.
And to answer your question from my perspective as a player, I don't think I thought about it as a player, but when I go back in time, place myself there and consider it, it's a distraction. And
to talk about it.
yes, it's all it is. That's the storyline.
Yeah.
This playoff series isn't the goaltender. We're playing. It's a group. We don't care. It just ends up becoming the only thing that's discussed. And again, it's so hard for the coach and for everybody because it's like that's not the only position. It's a key one, but there's other stuff going on here, and then it just becomes too much of a distraction.
Yeah.
I did a not to hijack your podcast, but if you remember back in 2006, Carolina wins the Stanley Cup. Martin Gerber's the starter all year. And played the first 2 games against Montreal, which the Hurricanes lost. And they went to Cam Ward, who ended up winning the Conn Smythe in Game 3, must win in Montreal. And Rod Brindamore was telling me the story about, I said, well, you remember what happened? He goes, that was the first time I was ever in Peter Laviolette's office. And Peter was so wound up about it. He brought Rod, who was his captain, into the office, which he never did. I'm thinking of doing this with the goalie. And Rod says, I looked around because I'd never been in the office. And then I said, okay, we like them both. And then he said it lasted 30 seconds and he left. But I am curious about, what the narrative, if it becomes a distraction or if players care, I wish Gus was playing or I wish Flower was playing. I wonder if they have those kinds of feelings.
And I'm not sure. I have 2 thoughts on what I think Dean will do. Dean has changed everything he did from last year. So he's starting with Gus right now. That doesn't mean that he's going to ride Gus the whole time, I don't think.
Has he named him?
No.
Okay.
No, and that could be completely wrong come game 1. Totally could.
When they have 50 penalties.
If we're wrong, then my prediction will be right out the window, all right?
Yeah. The other thing is Marc-Andre Fleury has been his best when he absolutely needs to be his best.
Back against the wall.
And opportunities started to be taken away from him. And that was the case this year, too. And Fleury started to turn it around when Gus started to play his best hockey. Fleury wants to be there. He wants to be one of the best all time. He's going to get his chance. It might not even be the game that we think it is. Let's say the Wild lose game 1, and it's 4-1. Like, they're never in it. That doesn't mean it's Fleury game 2. I think he'll get his chance. I don't necessarily think it's going to be when we think.
Isn't that a compliment to Fleury, too? You think of your stories about Pavelski and Ben and the way they're carving their will into things because they've never had that moment. Fleury's had
But that's what great
Fleury's
players,
had it so many times, and he's still, you know how competitive that guy is.
And that's the difference between good and great players. Great players can do that. Good players cannot.
Yep.
Right? Yeah.
So number 3, I wrote Blackjack 21. Duhaime coming back from injury. He looks like he's been at playoff speed for really the last month of the season, and he also can finish. We have a lot of these guys, kind of depth players that they get their breakaways and stuff, but it doesn't always go in. I think he's going to score a big goal someplace. I think he's going to be flying around, bouncing into people. He's just I don't know if Andy Ness had what he did with him, but he is just all rubber bands, and I think he's going to have a really nice first round.
I like that. And I mean, to me, that's what is so intriguing about really both these teams. But the depth is impressive, right? And Dean Nevison talked about it this morning. There are going to be lineup decisions. There are going to be people who are ticked off that they aren't playing because that's how this team is now built. You got that. That's a luxury to have. And
right.
So that's good.
And I like that point, and I say this at the start of every playoff, is I think it takes talent a little bit longer to adjust to the playoff game. So you have these highly skilled guys that can't adjust to the grind of playoff hockey because they haven't been doing it for 82 games. And then all of a sudden the first round, and it changes in the second and third round, the stars start to come out again. But it's the grinders that make the difference in like the first 3 or 4 games because they've been doing it for 82. And believe it or not, they're really good at it. And Duhaime is one of those guys.
I go for my third. The Wild will allow 4 or fewer power play goals in the series. I just figured 4 was a good number. But
that is a good number because I think the assumption is it's going 7 games. So if they're 50% on the kill, perfect half those games or kind of thing, that would be.
Yeah, you can't be giving up a power play goal every game.
Right.
Yeah. So I think 4 or fewer probably gets it done, and I think it goes back to the whole idea of discipline. And so that means you just can't be giving them the opportunities. And so it's not just how good is your PK, and Eriksson Ek and Gaudreau are so important for that, but you cannot allow them to go to the well. So that's.
This one I wrote, and I kind of feel like I'm cheating a little bit, and I wish I could put a higher number on it. But I thought 14 forwards are going to end up playing in this series. And, Ek coming back, that's if he does, don't know if he will or will not, that would be 13. And then the Ryan Reeves in and out, whoever goes in, that would be 14. So I kind of feel like that's somewhat cheating a little bit. But I think 14 to 15 forwards end up playing in this one, and the depth component to it starts to really show up. So Evason can tweak that. Like legit, the fourth line might all of a sudden have Nyquist on it, and you might look for an identity line and put Sundqvist on the third line, and just have a lot of different looks. And he's not married to anything. Where in the past, I think he was married to certain things. He's not. And he'll change anything, and I think we'll see that right away.
For my fourth, I have we've had this thing with Kirill, and then Kirill gets hurt, and then it's Matt Boldy World Tour. I think these two guys are going to come together in this round. I think you're going to see Matt Boldy hugging Kirill Kaprizov on the glass a lot. Whether they assisted each other on the power play, I guess that's where it would primarily be, or when we get off the kill and he puts them together. I think you're just going to see these, Batman and Robin together. We've kind of mentally put them apart, but I think for us to get all the way through, we're the lowest scoring team in the playoffs. I think these two superstars need to unite and be kind of it's like when they used to scramble Malkin and Crosby together occasionally when they needed it.
How does that work? Like when they, on those rare occasions, have you liked it when they? Because the whole Crosby-Malkin thing for years, because sometimes it would be like they don't do anything, right? And you're like, come on, do something. Yep. And like what's your take when on those rare moments when you do see, obviously on the power play, but if they happen to be on the ice together, do you like it?
Yeah, so and Evason has done this post-penalty kill, first shift after penalty kill, he'll put Boldy out there with Kaprizov and see what happens. I don't know that he'll do that now because he doesn't have to find Boldy that extra little bit of offense. That's what I think he was always in search of, was getting Boldy a couple extra touches and a couple feel-good moments. You didn't have to do that now with Johansson. So I don't know that 5-on-5 we're going to see them get together that much, but it was always good. Yeah. And it was always like a little bit of like a teaser, And
it was exciting.
Yeah.
And I'm talking more power play. I just think you always kind of set Kirill and Zuki together, and Boldy's been with Kevin and now with Johansson. But I think there's going to be something that happens with these two guys in the playoffs where they're the ones hugging on the glass.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to shift my numbers. So my number 5, which I will give now, so it's de facto number 4. I have Matt Boldy leads all players in the series in point production. And
nice.
I chatted with him in Nashville because he wasn't playing, obviously, and we were talking about last year's playoff, and I think he had 1 point, right, 1 assist, and he said, we were talking about what he'd learned, and he said, I didn't realize it was, I'm paraphrasing, that it was going to be that hard, that the ability to find chances and to the space and to do what he likes to do, those opportunities weren't there. And he said, now I get it. And I think he will start strong and finish strong in this series. And I like that, those top two lines, especially if Eriksson Ek is going to be playing, man, those are two forces that Dallas is going to have their hands full.
So Boldy's good in puck protection and being able to make plays and slide through hits and certain things like that. So for him to be there, and I'll be watching closely early on, is how many times his knees touch the ice, because everybody's going to finish their hit now and everybody's going to give the bump. And he was stronger to start the year, and he's gotten better and bigger. And early on in his career, it's he's trying to make a skill play, a turn, and it's a bump, and on the ice, plays dead. A little bump on the ice, plays dead. We're starting to see his knees hit the ice a lot less. He's not going down. He's standing up. And when he wins these battles, offense follows shortly thereafter. So if he can find a way to still be like physically strong, stay on his skates, and get through there, I think that's entirely possible. Cool. Mine is similar, sticking to that. It's on the power play. I think the Wild have to be about 25% on the power play to win this series. The challenge for them, I think, is going to be in puck retrievals. So Eriksson Ek was so good at keeping plays and power plays alive, so they get their shot, and he ties bodies up and allows the second wave to come in and collect the loose pucks. And then the power play in the top unit, that's why the top unit, we would see it throughout the year. They're out there 90 seconds.
Yeah.
It's because nobody could get the puck away. Without Eriksson Ek net front, who's going to retrieve those pucks? If something misses the net and it's on the wall, who's going to get it? And it's going to be 97. And then is he going to be in a spot where he can then score off of it? We'll see. But the power play for them to win the series has to be 25% or higher, and they're going to have to do it without a big piece in Ek, at least to start, it sounds like.
Very good. My last one, D-scoring. I think we're going to need to see these guys activating. You're going to need to see Spurgeon. You have 14 forwards. I don't know we got 9 defensemen. I don't know who's going to play, or if they're all going to play. Is Brock Faber going to play? I have no idea. But I think you need Dumba to score. You need Spurgeon to score. You need Klingberg to score. This team is not one of the highest scoring groups, and to get through playoff rounds, I think we need defenseman Goose, right? Just activating, getting into the play and scoring. Maybe it's Middleton from the point, chipping in. If we don't get the D chipping in, I think it gets a lot harder.
Well, and similar mindset. My final one is John Klingberg scores 2 power play goals and has at least 4 points in this series. And, you see bits of it. I know it was hard in Anaheim. I mean, the team it's a bad team. It's hard to play when you're that bad. So, I think you will see from John Klingberg as time goes on, and especially now that we're in the playoffs, you're going to see him walk that puck. There aren't many guys who do it as well as him. Walks the puck on the power play, 5-on-5 too, but walking the puck laterally along the blue line, getting the puck to the net, getting it on net. It's
huge.
Such an important skill, and he's really good at it. And I think, I think there's a reason. Bill Guerin's made some very shrewd moves. The Nyquist pick. I wish we had 6, because I would have mentioned Nyquist, who I think has the potential in a long playoff run to be one of the steals of the trade deadline. And but I think Klingberg's addition will be really important against Dallas.
I think Klingberg's power play prowess will be critical to success for the Wild in this series. The thing, and this isn't a bold prediction, but I do think there's a better than good chance that Brock Faber ends up playing. And if he does, that pushes Klingberg to his offhand. So he's a skilled player. 5-on-5 is where I think that will be the test for Klingberg, is can he play that offside without turning the puck over with a rookie? And that might be actually like one of the biggest circles for me too, is like just watching that. And they may make adjustments to move Klingberg back over to the right, but it's hard. And for the people that haven't paid attention or haven't looked into it with that much detail, you're forcing every dude or every play for him to pick it up on his backhand, to bring it to his forehand. It takes an extra little second, an extra little handle. You're making everything through the neutral ice, like with your body turned in the wrong direction. Every pinch, you're on your weak side. There's a lot on the D side that makes it hard playing that offside. And if he can do it 5-on-5, yeah, I think the numbers and things will be there. But that's the biggest test.
It's a great point
right now. My final one is half about the Wild shutting a guy down, half about I just don't know yet how much Robertson wants to win as much as he wants to score. And I think scoring in the playoffs comes down to wanting to win more than it comes down to wanting to score. And he's very talented, 100 and some points. He's done it multiple years. Like when he and Kaprizov were up there for the Calder 1 and 2, it was like, we'll see if he can do it again the next year. And he has, right? He has. He's a good player. What I just don't know is, does he want to win, or does he just want to score? I've had my eyes on Kaprizov enough to where I wholeheartedly believe he's a winner. Like today's practice intensity was even higher. The dude wants to win.
Yep.
Robertson, we'll see. So I think he gets outdueled by Kaprizov, and I have Robertson with 3 goals, maybe 4 or 5 points on the series, but a 100-point guy, his production will go down quite a bit. So he's not going to get 1.25 points per game. No chance. It's going to be 5-6 points max kind of thing.
It goes without saying, I think I'm glad we're playing Dallas. We've had this last 2 seasons for Wild fans, I think, have been medicine. Anybody that was pining away for the North Stars, I think we've got this superstar here now, Billy G coming in, Boldy, another bright spot, and in a weird way, it's like we have to go through Dallas. It's like we have to put the stake in our personal Darth Vader or whoever that would be from taking the North Stars away many years ago. I think it's great. I'm all for it. Let's end somebody's season. It's the only time you get to take
Minnesota bad guy. No more Minnesota nice.
Yeah, just take a whole city and just have them, just a storm cloud over them. Yeah, just you're done. You loved this thing.
You want to be hated for the first time in your life.
You loved this thing, and now we took it away from you. We're going to move on. You're done. I want that feeling. We just haven't had that in many, many years. So, that's why we're here. I even went and when I was at the hardware store, I did buy some W's, 4 of them. So if we can get any wins, we're ready to stick them on the wall here.
Dude, you bought M's.
They're the same.
Were you binge drinking last night? You bought M's,
They're
dude.
the same. They're the same. It's the same. Look.
I wasn't even going to ask.
It's the same. Because look, the UPC's here.
M and W? Okay.
It's a W. I thought the same thing when I walked out. I'm like, hey, they're doing both. Yeah, but we're ready.
Final thoughts on the series before we get out of here.
I've been waiting for it all year. I've been waiting for it since the St. Louis thing last year, and I do hope there's mayhem. I know that you guys don't think there's going to be, but I'm down for some Fauda. I'm down for. I think Billy likes it too. Let's get weird. Let's get 1970s. It probably won't happen, but if it does, I told you so. So we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. There's so much uncertainty, really. There's so much unknown about what is ahead, right? And I think it's not just in this series. I said this to someone earlier this morning. I think Florida is going to give Boston every single thing they can handle. Florida's got nothing to lose. Boston set an NHL record, and it would not surprise me if Florida wins that series. And I think Winnipeg's going to beat Vegas. I think Winnipeg they're sour and they're an angry, sour bunch, but this is their last best chance to do something. And I think Hellebuck's good enough, and I think they're going to beat Vegas. And so I think that starting Monday night, the tails are going to be revealed, and especially for this Wild team, we're going to find out. We're going to find out what they're made of, and there's nothing better than that.
The better team wins a 7-game series. They do. And you had your chance. If you don't, you have to tip your cap to the other team if they beat you, and vice versa. But my final thoughts is it's intriguing. This one reminds me a lot of the Vegas series 2 seasons ago, where Vegas was a juggernaut. They were top. They might have been top 5 in all categories, and the Wild took them to 7 games. Ironically, it's the same bench boss too. Yeah. It's Pete DeBoer, and everywhere he goes, he has success early on, good at getting a lot out of the guys. Where I think there can be a difference too is pressure. He has pressure that he's maybe never had before, and it sounds weird saying this guy wins everywhere he goes. He's feeling so much pressure. You start to get there starts to build this narrative that he's like Bruce Boudreau can win during the regular season, but he can't finish it off. Pete DeBoer is feeling pressure to win. Joe Pavelski's feeling pressure to win. They never have been pressure to win. We'll see how these guys perform under immense pressure, but it seems like a very similar series to that, where the Wild know that they're somewhat the underdog. They've got that chip on their shoulder, and there is pressure on key pieces in Dallas, and how they handle that might make all the difference. But super excited to see how this goes. And Scott, thanks for joining us today. We're going to be leaning on you heavily throughout the playoffs. John, you're the best as always. Anything else before we get ourselves out of here?
No, that was therapeutic. I enjoyed our conversation. I feel a little bit better going after being horizontal on my couch reading about the Dallas Stars. I think we've found a soft underbelly, ironically, on some gritty paper today. So let's make these dreams come true.
All right, my man. We're here
till it's here.